Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Short Story Long. This week, we're sitting down with my friend Courtney Reum. Courtney and his brother, Carter, were on the podcast a few weeks ago talking about their life story, how they worked at Goldman Sachs, graduated from Harvard, started Vive, the liquor company, and then went on to found M13, which invests in and helps build brands. Really successful guys, a lot of knowledge on building businesses and scaling them and selling them. So they actually just released a book yesterday. It's called Shortcut Your Startup. And it's literally every lesson through the whole process of creating, scaling, and selling a company. What to know, what to look out for, what to think about, what's important. Because that book came out yesterday, I wanted to have them back on. So Courtney came in, and I wanted to really go over all of those things, all of those topics with him, because I do think that a lot of you guys are wanting to start companies. Maybe you have started companies. Maybe you want to know how to scale them. Maybe you want to know what to look for when it comes time to exit the company. He has a lot of good insight in that. He's worked on every different side of it, and this book covers all of it very thoroughly. So he came in. We did an interview. We got a lot of good gems. I would suggest listening to it, soaking it up, and then if you really like it, go get their book. It's called Shortcut Your Startup. It just came out, and it's sort of everything that we talk about in this interview times a million. A lot of good details, a lot of good stuff. Thank you, guys. I hope you like it. Short Story Long with Courtney Reum. Let's go.
The hardest part is figuring out what you want to master.
Focus on your product.
Can you tell somebody that they suck?
You gotta just go for this is exactly what I want to do for a living.
You can't even tell somebody that their breath is life.
All right, here we are. Short Story Long, we're back again, and we are back again with, I'd say, one of my favorite guests. And you and your brother really did a good job. One of the things that I was such a big fan of is not only was there so much knowledge in your podcast, but you guys together work really well. You know what I mean? Like, it was funny, but also like smart. I think a lot of people I got a lot of good feedback on that one. Courtney Reum, welcome back to Short Story Long.
Thank you. You're making me blush. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. I really, what's funny is we were just talking, you were just meeting with Rob, my cousin, and we were talking too about your guys' podcast. And I really I'm trying to nail in like what podcasts do the best and what obviously the people are reacting to the most. And obviously I get a lot of listens when it's a big name that everyone knows, like a Wiz Khalifa or a Kyrie Irving, for obvious reasons. But I myself just love, and Rob was saying that these are his favorites also, the ones where it's real, it's people who have been through the entrepreneur trenches, the build, the building a brand, exiting a brand. Like, we just love that. And so that's why I think I gravitate to your guys' last one so much, and especially this one and your guys' book. And just a lot of value there. So thank you for coming and sharing that.
Thank you. And yours has been one of my favorites too. We've been hustling this book, as you know. So we've been doing a lot of podcasts, and yours has been one of the most fun because you make it easy. It's very conversational. It feels real. You do some of these others, and it feels like a very canned conversation.
Yeah,
and not to rag on Kyrie, because I would love if you had him back on here, but
Yep.
like in the off season, some of those answers he gave to those questions, I would love to have him on here and just try to be like, what did you mean when you said X?
100%.
Because I think people want very like crystal clear answers on things in general, but especially something like starting a business. But Kyrie's answers were like so esoteric. I was like, I would love if we get him back on here for 15 minutes.
And I don't know that he knows always. You know what I mean? Like, he's talking about the earth being flat and it's just a different.
And he's like, I think he's trying to put that Duke education to good use.
Yeah, 100%. And you want to know what's funny is you get a guy like Wiz Khalifa who you would expect to be even more out there than Kyrie, and he was actually like good. Like, he gave pretty good answers and knows why he purposely went in to create a certain sound of music, and he did that with Black and Yellow and created these like stadium anthems, and like he was solid, and people really like that one too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love these, man. This is obviously where I exist, is in entrepreneur land, in these what we call trenches, and I just love these conversations. So thank you.
Me too.
And that being said, your book, Shortcut Your Startup, you gave me this rough copy, which I actually feel kind of cool. Like, I have like a collector's item or something.
Yeah, spelling mistakes and all in there.
I love it, man. And then there's the full like notes to put acknowledgments at the end, and like I really feel like I got something special. But I read it right after our podcast. We promised that we would save this one till when the book was coming out, which it just came out yesterday. So congratulations.
Thank you.
But I read it and I just loved it. I think you guys did a really, really, really good job at sort of taking people from beginning to exit on a company. And I think that what was cool about it is you covered essentially if you want to create a $1 million profitable business and live off of it, or if you want to create the next Uber. Like you kind of covered it all in here. And there's a bit of a roadmap to either one. And I think that for young people, like entrepreneurship is hotter than ever, as you know. I think they're going to find a lot of value in this thing, man. I think you guys did a really, really good job.
Thank you. That's the hope when you put something out in the world. But yeah, I think one of our big guiding tenets is that there's a lot of great books out there, and we're just kind of trying to be one of them. But I think we said if we do anything, let's just try to make it really distilled down, really easy to follow, really take some stuff. You know, I think there's a lot of new information in there, but there's a lot of stuff that we've gotten from other people or read elsewhere that we just tried to synthesize it a little differently because, you know, there's a lot of theoretical ones like Steve Case, who's one of the people, the founder of AOL, who's you know, one of our endorsements on the back. He wrote a great book called Third Wave that's kind of the theory of how these entrepreneurial things are now happening. So we're kind of trying to be the playbook if he's the theory.
Yeah, perfect. And you want to know what I like so much is like, I've been doing a lot of reading lately, and obviously I'm reading a lot in this space. But one thing that always gets me is when there's people writing these sort of entrepreneur books or even personal development books or whatever that haven't actually been through it. And you and your brother very much so have been through it with starting Vive and obviously all the years in investment banking, but then taking that risk to go out, start your own company, do it the right way, go sit at bars. You talk about that in this. You're going and sitting at bars, ordering cocktails and trying to figure out behavior of people in bars, really building that company and then finding the right time to exit. So for you, I don't know, there's just something different about reading advice from somebody who has actually done it the real way. And when there's a lot of books of people kind of giving you theories that they're guessing, you know?
Yeah, and I also think, you know, we do a lot with like kind of different peer groups, like something like a YPO. And, you know, in YPO, when it's like other founders or CEOs or presidents, they're really big on, rather than give people advice, you kind of say, in my experience, X, Y, Z. And so I think that's what we try to do with the book a lot, is not say be prescriptive and go, you should do this. It's more like, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but like sailboat or speedboat, it's I can't tell you which one you are. All I can do is kind of give you some frameworks for trying to figure out what you are and then how to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, you did it good. And like I said, I think a kid just starting a company, or me who, for instance, has been running a company for 9 years, there was still so many things in here that I'm like, oh yeah. Like that's what, it's almost like I'm instinctually making decisions or doing things. And you guys put some stuff into words where I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. Or that's the goal. You know what I mean?
Glad to hear it. We tried to write it very much in mind with people like you that have been doing it a while, and hope that when you peel back the onion, there's still some good take-home value for you.
There is. Okay, so my first question before we get into it is, you know, you had been through investment banking, quit to start this company. The company was really successful, obviously worked your ass off. Company was really successful, had a big exit. Now you're doing investing full-time with M13. Why did you guys decide to write a book? Like, why did you decide that it was the time to sort of pass this knowledge on?
Yeah, I think, and just to clarify a little bit, we're not, I won't really say we're investors, although we definitely we've made tons of investments in companies. We kind of consider ourselves like brand builders, and the way that happens now, part of that has to be around investing. So it's kind of more with M13, how do we have this platform approach where we can either start or affect change across a platform of a bunch of brands at once, rather than me starting a company tomorrow, being the founder, being the CEO, and trying to build it. And so that actually, I think, informs part of why we did the book, because we just felt like doing that, we have a unique place in the world, a unique vantage point, and now was kind of the time to, you know, to share some of that, because we feel like the way companies are built has changed so much in the last 10 years, even really the last 5 years. And we're at that point where I think we're just old enough, being in our 30s, pushing late 30s, to have wisdom, thus experience, but just young enough to kind of get it and still be, you know, kind of on the cusp of millennials, or have our pulse on things like your cool brands, you know?
Yeah. Thank you. That's cool. I think you guys are in a good spot. And that's, even for me, like I'm trying to stay in a similar lane where like you're giving advice or input, but you're still approaching it in a cool way. You know, like it's not some 50-year-old dude saying, here's what I did back when I was young, you know, and I think you guys definitely have that, like, you know, you're at Art Basel, you know what I mean? Like you're cool young guys.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I think you kind of have to do that. I mean, we just came back from, you know, CES last week, and it's like, I could skip it, but there's also just so many people that you bump into that you just kind of got to keep yourself in the throes and the hustle. It's really different. You know, we talk about when you talk about like some 50-year-old guy, we talk about my dad a lot in the book, who it's dedicated to, and it's amazing how when we spent time with him, I mean, we could never do what he did. He ran a couple companies over like a 30, 40-year period.
Yeah.
But I think he also started to realize that the way companies are built now, he could probably not do what we're doing, you know, and it's great because there's like this kind of, my brother likes to call it reverse mentoring. He's somehow trying to convince Katie Couric, actually at dinner last week, to be his reverse mentor.
Yeah.
But it's like that movie with Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway, neither of which I normally like, but that movie's just great, The Intern.
Yeah.
So it really is how the world works now, right?
It's so true. It's so true. Okay, so getting right into it, you start off, and I love this opening, you start off with kind of this honest, a little bit blunt, like introduction or almost warning, or you know what I mean, to people who are starting. And I'm a big fan of it and the way that you worded it. And I guess my question is, there's a lot of talk about, number one, entrepreneurship is hotter than ever. It's the cool thing to do now. Also, there's a lot of talk, I've had a lot of debates over whether now is a good time, best time ever, or worst time ever to start a company and to be an entrepreneur. What's sort of your feelings on that? Like if I'm thinking about it, right? I'm little Johnny, I'm 20 years old, and I'm like, man, now's my time. You know, what's kind of your like input on all of those things?
Well, whether it's good time, best time, bad time, I think that's so dependent on the industry. And, you know, some things are counter-cyclical, the buy and the blood in the streets. Some things are better when things are going well. But so the macro things I think are hard to comment on. In terms of a personal psychological thing, you know, my brother and I are both into psychology a lot. The human fear of loss aversion is like an incredible thing, kind of meaning like, I put it this way, like Bobby Knight, the famous Indiana basketball coach, when they asked him when he retired, he said it was time to retire because the big wins did not start to feel as good as the losses. Yeah. And even though he won a lot more than he lost, if he probably won 4 out of 5 games for his career, the 1 out of 5 stung more.
Yeah.
And I equate that to, most people would rather start something, fail, and feel like they had peace of mind of trying than not try. That's where the kind of loss aversion or fear or regret comes in. Having said that, we are big believers, as you said, we put in there the entrepreneurial readiness test. I do not think it's for everyone. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't try because of that psychology.
Yeah. And don't you think, like, my feeling is it's really easy to say it's harder than ever to start a company, and it's easy to find the negative. And I guess at any point in history, you can find it positive or negative. It's what type of person you are, right? But I just feel like, man, the barrier of entry to most businesses is almost non-existent now. You know, and before there was all these gatekeepers, and you had to go get a big retailer to support you. Obviously, in like liquor and stuff like that, that's still a thing. But let's say in clothing and in some of these other things, even launching apps and stuff like that people are doing more than ever, like there's just no barrier to entry. And I think my opinion is, sure, there's a lot of noise, and the bad news is there's a lot of noise. Everyone's starting a company. Everyone is hit with 1 million pieces of content every single day. How are you going to rise above that? But the good news is you do have a chance to actually rise above that and do that on your own. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is, I agree with all that wholeheartedly. As you said, I think the 2 biggest things are that the 2 main barriers to entry to starting a company have been somewhat or largely democratized. Part of the reason we wrote the book, I would say money, which I don't take for granted. A lot of people listening to this, or a lot of people reading our book, are going, where can I find money? And so I don't want to make it sound like that's easy, but there's probably no arguing it's easier than it's ever been. There's a bunch of different options, even if you have no clue where to start. And then, like you said, I call it finding your tribe. You know, you can start an online clothing brand, and if you just kind of hit on a nerve, you never have to go to Target. You never have to go to Barney's. And it depends what your goal is for the business. If it's to make it big, it probably has to. But you can do that, and it's just so fascinating that you can just kind of start these things like that. And that's part of what we're trying to do, and I know you are.
Yeah, it's so true, man. It's so interesting. Why is money more available than ever? Because there's more people willing to invest than ever, or because of things like Kickstarter? Or
yeah, I think it's exactly. It's a little bit of everything. There's the crowdfunding rules, which have changed. So no longer is it like, oh, I grew up in this neighborhood with these friends and I know where to find money, and this person didn't. Of course, that always matters, but anyone can use Kickstarter. We're big actually fans of Indiegogo because they do even more kind of on the business side. And yeah, I think there's just so many resources out there that, just remember, even 10 years ago, like you would have never been able to figure out Tim Cook at Apple's email. Now I have Tim Cook at Apple's email. I think we put in the book, tim.cook@apple.com.
Yeah.
It is not hard to get Tim Cook's email.
Yeah.
It is real hard to get him to reply. He's never replied to one of them. I've only sent like 3 just for fun. But the point is, you can find like anything, but then it's what the hustle and what you make of it.
Yeah, that's so true. It's literally the time of like resourcefulness and like persistent. I don't know, man. You got to be smarter than ever because you can get anything. You can get access to almost anything. And it's just like, what do you do with that access? Is really interesting to me. I'm still trying to remind myself that every day, right? Like you have to be that like scrappy guy at all times, because as everyone else is. I'll meet these young guys. I did a podcast the other day with a 17-year-old kid from his bedroom in Virginia, and I was shocked at like, he has 160,000 Instagram followers. He got me. He's going up to New York to meet Gary Vee next week. He's just a scrappy guy, and I'm like, shit.
We can talk offline, but I think I might use him, no joke.
For your company?
No, I mean, I think we're currently using him.
Yep. I bet you do.
We're literally, this is how the world works now. We're on, one of my guys was telling me a story. If it's the same kid or someone else, he's on the phone with him. Someone's like, he's like, Mom, I'm on the phone. You're like, holy cow. The fate of my verified Instagram account is in this 17-year-old's hands.
Gotta be. But that's the world we live in. And I do that thing, and I'm like, okay, 5 years ago, if somebody would have asked me to do that interview, I would have been like, what the hell are you? I mean, not to sound like an asshole, but I would have been like, no, hell no. You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing with my time? Hell no. And now I just know that those are the type of things that you do. And so I did it, and then when it was over, I was like, damn it, man, am I working as hard as this kid is on getting guests from my podcast? Like, is he outworking me? This 17-year-old, like, getting lunch from his mom. It's crazy. But
he's got extra time because mom's making him lunch, probably not paying a rent.
It's not fair,
She's doing the laundry. Yeah.
He's got me beat.
Yep.
Know your unfair advantage.
Exactly.
One thing that I love, you can just quickly, that I think that I try to tell people more than ever now, because I didn't think about this when I was starting Young and Reckless or any of the business stuff, and I think it's so important, is you guys talk about knowing what success looks like for you. What's that mean to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those exercises. You're going to have to do it sooner or later. You might as well try and do it up front. It doesn't mean you can't change it, but like we were working with a brand the other day where I said, if we're going to do this, I just need to know, is your plan to sell or not sell? And it's not that you have to sell, but if you want to have the option to sell, you have to make every decision with that in mind. And then when the day of reckoning comes, maybe we're profitable, maybe you don't want to sell, maybe the economies change, but at least you know you were aligned from the start rather than not making those decisions up front, because it's the same work either way.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't stress that one enough, man, because not that I ever feel like it really hurt me, especially on Young and Reckless, which is obviously the main thing, but damn it, if I would have had that like 100% clarity first, I think that I would have saved a lot of time and a lot of pointless hoops that I jumped through and whatever, just to get it where I want to get it. And even now, like when I look at my plan for 2018, that's still a question for 2018 that I'm really trying to make sure that we're brutally honest with. And what changes are we making with the company, depending on what our goal is, So important. Okay, you guys also talk a lot about before you start. I think that's a big one. So once again, let's put in the hypothetical. I'm a kid wanting to start a company. I think I have the best idea ever. All my friends like it. What do I do to make sure that there's a real opportunity there and it's a real business?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think, we say get in the trenches and call it investigation. I mean, whatever it is for your industry, I just think people mostly need to dig deeper than they do, because it's like, oh, this doesn't exist. And it's really hard to find things that don't exist. Yeah. So whenever I think people need to start with a little more skepticism of like, wait, if I thought of this, someone else probably has. Yeah. Doesn't mean you still can't do it. Doesn't mean you can't improve on it, but you have to really dig deeper, because there are not that many new ideas in the world, unless you're like Elon Musk. It's more about, okay, like just understanding what's out there. So it's such a delicate teeter-totter. Is that what you call it? Teeter-totter?
Yeah.
With, they call it, I think, kind of the entrepreneurial ignorance bliss, meaning had I known everything I now know about the alcohol industry, I never would have done it. Yeah. Yet you just kind of dive in and do something. But I should have done much more investigation just to have a little better sense of what the competition was and what the odds were.
Yeah. That's how I feel about apparel. I mean, I don't know. The opportunity was so big because of obviously having a TV show to market it and do all these things. But really, in hindsight, like apparel is one of the gnarliest industries in the world. And so there are days when I'm like, shit, man, I should have sold mattresses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, and here's a question. How do you know? I think a lot of people come up with a genius idea. This is it. This is going to change the world. I'm going to get filthy, filthy rich. But sometimes they have an idea that's a product and not a company.
Right.
How do you clarify the difference? How do you know what you have, and how do you make up for any weakness that might be there?
Yeah, and I think we talk about it in there we pick on a little bit this shish kebab flipper thing that we had on our TV show Hatched.
Yeah.
And, I think it was like this cool kebab flipper where you do something, I don't even remember how it works exactly, you flip it over and you can use it for a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
But I guess it's almost like that mindset of like an as seen on TV type of product versus a company. Now, unless I can take that kebab flipper and turn it into, oh, and here's why I can sell a grill that does this and all the other things, now you might actually have a company.
Yep.
But it is really the difference between a product and a company.
Yeah, and you think that's big? Like if I just have a product, let's say I have just a product and that's all I have, and I can't think of a way to turn it into a company. Do I still try to go with that and just make a bunch of cash and do like some home shopping network hustle, but just know that there's no exit? Is that what you would say?
Yeah, as a general rule, yes. And it doesn't mean, like you said, it can't be profitable, but that probably means because you have a product and not a company, yeah, let's just follow that exactly. No one's probably going to buy it. Therefore, it has to be built profitably. Therefore, you have to run it for cash versus top line growth and exit, and it just informs every decision starting from that and working backwards.
Yeah, so it's just a quick let me get 2 years.
And that's how you see these things. Like, I don't have one on right now, but like my friend is the founder of that Loki bracelet, L-O-K-A.
Yep.
And it's like, listen, I think he sold, I don't know the exact number, but I believe it's like $100 million of those. So I'd actually say he's made that into a company, but that's the type of thing that I'd call a little bit like the kebab flipper. It's a product.
Yeah.
His just happened to be through the roof. But to me, those are kind of products that would worry me that one day the bottom just falls out because there's the next version of that, even though he's had tremendous success.
Why doesn't he evolve to make different sort of like a necklace or a...
Yeah. And I don't, for all I know, he might be because I haven't followed it closely the last 6 months. But yeah, he's going to other product lines or like for the person that cultishly follows it because it's, it's I believe, mud from the Dead Sea and water from Mount Everest. Yes. Maybe he should actually start doing like experiential trips or partner with XYZ, or like that's the type of thing that's going to make it more of an experiential company rather than just a product.
But $100 million in beaded bracelets is
I mean,
I can't say I'd be too hungry to evolve either.
Yes.
And what is it, Coachella? Every Coachella they give you your Neon Carnival.
Yeah, I was going to say last year at Neon Carnival. Yeah. Our
Thank
friend
you.
puts
Thank
that
you to
party
him
on.
for that.
Yes, Brent Bolthouse and his team. I was like, that was cool. Like, I'll take one of those over.
I got to wear that damn thing all weekend.
Right. Still better than the thing you cut off the next day.
That's true.
At least you're balanced and all zen.
True. Highest and lowest. I love your guys' speedboat sailboat analogy. What you say is that there are two types of businesses, essentially, a speedboat and a sailboat, and it's really important to know which one you are. So my obvious question is, what are the differences in companies, and how do I know which one mine is?
Yeah. I would start by saying, if you're unsure, I would just assume you're a sailboat.
Okay.
I mean, vast majority of companies are sailboats.
Agreed.
To do the absence of a sailboat, a speedboat tends to be the companies that are in the headlines all the time. So this is what's confusing to people. A speedboat tends to be like an Uber, an Airbnb, a Lyft, something like that are, figuratively speaking, like winner take all sort of markets. So it's like Uber is trying to grab market share from Lyft before Lyft grabs market share from Uber, and that's just in the US. But those are kind of markets where you just have to try and scale them really quickly and have as much frictionless scaling as possible. But almost everyone should try to be a speedboat, especially brands we're talking about, where you have a nice little product, you're seeing some traction. Don't try to motor power through it right away.
Yeah.
Because that's how you run out of gas, which gas usually is money, or it can even be things just like energy or burnout or employees.
You said most companies should be a speedboat or a sailboat?
Sorry, most companies should be a sailboat.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and what you talk about too is that you can be a sailboat and then turn into a speedboat.
Right, exactly.
Which is cool.
Yep, and I think we give an example of a company that I was on the board of for quite a while called Kavita. It's like a probiotic kombucha type drink.
Yeah.
That got sold to Pepsi really successfully about a year ago. they, when they came out with this probiotic drink, like nobody knew what probiotics were. It was like something that you had heard about. It was in my yogurt. I hadn't put in a beverage. They started in earnest, got a great following, got great traction, had a couple breaks. Kombucha took off at the same time. They launched that line. And by the time they really decided to put down that sail and become a speedboat, people knew what probiotics were and they were ready for it. And they literally doubled sales 3 years in a row. And we're talking big numbers. I mean, they're over 100 million in sales now to get to the point of exit.
Do you think they knew that there was a speedboat opportunity coming, and they sailed around until that day came?
Yeah, that's the analogy we give, and I really believe it. The smart ones kind of go, okay, I've had a little progress, catch a little gust of wind. Okay, the wind dies down. We'll just chill out here for a little while. We're doing stuff on the side in the meantime.
Yeah.
And then you catch another gust of wind. So yeah, I think they did.
That's interesting, man.
You can just kind of start to, it's like you can smell it, or like, I guess with the wind analogy, you can just feel that the wind's picking up.
It's so true.
When the wind is at your back, you know it.
In life.
Yeah.
I notice that like on everything I do, you know. And would you say like a sailboat company, let's say I come to you, I have an idea, I want to start a sailboat company. Would you essentially say that what qualifies or what would make a good sailboat company is one that, there is an opportunity for, there's a market for, there's profitability, but there just might not be some like 0 to 100 million plan in the next 2 years, right? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And we talk about in the book, but one of the things we say is you should always be looking for your key insight. I mean, most great companies, let's just stick on we say Lyft because we're investors, but like Lyft or Airbnb, they're actually built on 1 or 2 key insights, right? I mean, Airbnb is called Airbnb because it was going to be air, bed, and breakfast.
Yeah.
Do you think they ever aspired in their wettest, wildest dreams to do what they've done? No. Yeah. But they found 1 or 2 key insights, and you just exploit those till the cows come home.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I love this stuff. Another big thing that you cover that I love is equity. That's another huge question that I get a lot from friends. I've made mistakes there on my own, from people on Instagram, whatever. What do I do? Once again, I'm starting this company, and another big thing is I think these young people are real quick to think that like partners are the answer, right? Like I have this idea, I just need someone to do all the work. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like I get that a lot. And I think that you guys obviously talk about partners a lot in here too, but you want to know what? I'll wrap it. I'll put it all into one. My question is, how do you know who the right partners are? How do you find them? How do you really know what you need and what you're missing? And then once you do, how do you treat equity?
Well, the partners thing is hard because you just never know who you're getting into bed with. And I always joke that if anyone had figuring out, which partnership is a form of hiring, they'd have a multi-trillion-dollar company. So there's people who do it better for sure, but it's impossible to nail it.
It's so hard. We were just talking about that before.
Yeah, but I think on the equity, I always stick by a few guiding principles. And these are going to kind of sound like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth, but just remember, once you give out equity, for the most part, it's never coming back, right? So that equity's gone. Yep. So treat it like gold. But having said that, the days of like starting a really successful company where you have no investors and no partners and it's just you, they happen, but they're few and far between. So we live in much more of a transparent, open source sort of world. So we always try to bring in partners, and things we're doing now, we always make sure we set aside enough equity to get people excited. Yep. So you have to kind of balance those two.
Yeah. That's interesting, man. And I would say too, like to young people, my advice would be, number one, I think that if you just come up with an idea and then think about who can help you do it, you're selling yourself way short. And what I've learned is as you go and start to build even a foundation of what the idea could eventually be, you start to attract better people all along anyway, right? Like if you have an idea that's in 10 retailers, you're going to attract better partners than just an idea. Right? Yep. If you have an idea that's in 100 retailers, you're going to attract blah, 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 right? It's kind of like the Shark, you see it over and over on Shark Tank. But I think that is such a massive, massive part of it. And then the aspect of just learning as much as you can, read this book, read everything that you can, but then just go for it. Like I'll just say, when I started Young and Reckless, I gave a massive piece of equity to a friend and to help, and it didn't end up working out, and I had to pay to get that piece of equity back. But it was a lesson learned, and I can't really say that I wouldn't take a similar risk again. I would like to try to find a way maybe that, you earn the equity over a period of time, or I can earn it back, or you can structure any deal.
And that's a different conversation on equity, but I think you're right. Is like we try to put in bells and whistles so it doesn't all vest day one, or there's certain performance attached to earning the equity, not just time, but time's always a good one. Or, we always try to be careful. It's hard when money's tight, but if you have someone that's doing a one-time, one-off service for you, some of these people now will be like, oh, I'll take equity in lieu of cash, or I'll take some of both. But if this is someone that you're going to work with one time, unless you have absolutely no other option, I try not to give equity for stuff like that. I try to give equity for, oh, you're my ongoing manufacturing partner. Oh, you're always going to be like handling the Amazon e-commerce sales of the brand. I mean, if it's ongoing things like that, it's a lot easier to stomach giving them some equity.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, that's something that I think like when you're starting a business, you really got to like dig deep on and make sure that you're not shortcutting it or waiting around too much. The other thing is building your business around your unfair advantage. This part, I would say this might be the one that got me the most. Just the clarity on sort of your life and your skill sets and what you bring to the table, and then building around that as opposed to, trying to just treat it like you're coming to the table with the same thing that everyone else is. What's an unfair advantage to you guys? Like, what defines that?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things, but it's just I took one acting class for fun, like I don't know, over a decade ago, and the teacher, I'll never forget, said, she was saying to people that were serious about acting in the room, when you figure out what you can do or bring to the table that no one else can, you'll start getting work. And I was like, dang, I would never work as an actor because, I don't think I'm horrible looking, but I know better looking people. I'm pretty funny, but I know much fun. I mean, you go down the list and you're like, woo, okay, put it that way. I would never have a shot. And I think unfair advantages are a little bit the same in that there are certainly, I do not want to pretend that everyone has the same unfair advantages. Like people that you and I probably know have really good unfair advantages.
Yeah.
Opportunity is not the same, but it's a little bit like creating your own luck. I genuinely believe, for a bunch of the reasons we've already talked about, everyone has the ability to make their own luck and create some of their unfair advantages. Now, again, person X's unfair advantages might be a lot more consequential or a lot more significant than another person's, but you can still create your own, and that's the best you can do. I think to start is figure out what yours are, figure out what gives you energy, and try and create advantages around it. I mean, it goes a little bit back to what we're talking about jokingly about getting Tim Cook's email, right? Yeah. You can make some of those unfair advantages that you couldn't 10 years ago. So if you have enough execution and resilience and hustle, I'm confident everyone can develop some.
Yeah. And the thing that got me is like everyone has them, man. And you might look at it, you might even be listening to this right now and think, oh, well, I don't have, I live in Nebraska and I don't, but it's like literally everyone. When I read it, because I think that my unfair advantage is sort of obviously my following from TV time, my ability to be on camera. Like I'm good out front.
You make people very comfortable. That's why I have my shoes off here for our second interview.
Like that.
And we have, hopefully some people see, we have the book merchandise next to a Solo cup. I mean,
that's real brand.
You just disarmed me to the point where I'll just say anything.
That's on brand, right? That's my unfair advantage.
That's why I'm confident you can get Kyrie to really answer some questions next time.
About the damn earth. Okay. But my thing is like, I actually don't like it. I don't love it. Like I don't wake up in the morning and think like, man, how can I go look into my phone and make some videos, you know what I mean? Like, but I do realize that it is part of my unfair advantage is that following and that ability to sort of cater to them. And so this gave me a little bit of clarity of like, man, you have to take advantage of that. Like you can't just act like you're some regular entrepreneur that does, like that's stupid.
It's a really good startup switch up, I think, in terms of almost assessing your propensity to be an entrepreneur, because yes, I think people will read and go, oh, I'm sitting in, we'll keep picking on Nebraska. I don't have any unfair advantages. Okay, great. You can do one of those woe is me's. If you keep telling yourself that, like that's not the kind of resiliency and mindset, as you know, that's going to make you a good entrepreneur. Like at some point you have to flip that script. And if you can't figure out unfair advantages, then maybe it's just not for you.
Yeah. And it's even like a family member has money, somebody has access to something, this person, like they are there. It doesn't, just because it's not exactly what is said in the book or what I just said doesn't mean that they're not there. I think auditing that and sort of picking one, I think is like priceless information.
Absolutely.
Another big one is that I see people go wrong on a lot is they have this idea and they think that it's so naturally, and maybe I'm being a little negative here, and I hope I'm not, but I see a lot of people that come up with an idea. Number one, they think it's the best idea in the world without checking, without getting honest feedback from who would be customers, without checking the market, without whatever. I think that they then a lot of times look for someone to come save the day and maybe give them a bunch of money or run the company. And I think another huge one is they protect it too much. And I've seen people that come in here and are hesitant to even tell us their idea because they think everyone's going to steal their idea, or they think blah, blah, blah. And you guys talk about that in here. And I always tell people as much as I can you got to put it out. Like, you got to let it out. You got to talk to everyone about it. You just got to go. You have no choice.
Yeah. I mean, I think we say in there, don't coddle or cradle your precious idea, because the underlying thing that we say in there, but I think one of the overlays to the whole book is, I believe time is the new money, which is easy to say if you have money. And so people will say and go, oh, but that's easy to say if you're a company that's well capitalized. Even when you're not well capitalized, you really have to make time the new money, because if you cradle your idea or keep it secret or everything else, there's probably someone else doing it, and losing 6 months is as detrimental to any business in the way and the speed with which these things are built.
Yeah. And being able to pivot is what you talk about a lot too. Like, I think a lot of people start a business, and then when things change or go wrong, they go down with the ship. And that's something in apparel that I've had to learn crazy, because retail got smacked, and I spent 6 or 7 years doing nothing but traveling around and trying to build a retail presence. And then when they get smacked across the face, I saw a lot of our competitors ride that into the ground and refuse that was the truth, and think that the mall was going to come back. And that's something that you guys cover really well too. I mean, you had to do that with Vive, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, one of our learnings for Vive, and why I wouldn't probably do something quite like that again, is because when you realize, oh crap, we need to change X, when you're in something like an alcohol brand, it's not like I can pivot. Again, nothing's easy, but if you're in sweatpants and you go, oh, there's this crazy market for culottes, I'm going to pivot into that. I mean, there was no pivoting in alcohol. It's not like I'm going to start making grapefruit juice. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. So it's scary how few options we had.
Yeah, man. And that's what got me, is what I saw with these people is, if retail dies, it doesn't matter how much time you spent doing it. It doesn't matter what you think people owe you. You have to start building your e-commerce, right? And that's where I think there's a lot of like handoffs in industries, is like, I think a lot of times the ones that built around retail that can't pivot crash and die. And then the new brands are the ones that were built on e-com, because they don't know any other way, right? And the good ones are the ones that are able to switch throughout that whole process. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. And just connecting online to offline is even these brands that we think of as being largely built online. I'm wearing Warby Parker glasses that we were early investors in. Great brand, love the guys, love the story. They're now doing, roughly half their sales from retail, which just shows there's still a big opportunity there. And it just means that there's a big opportunity in both places when you do it right.
You know what I've noticed the hardest thing is not to pivot when you're failing, but to look at pivots when you're winning.
Yeah.
And like to be winning and be on top of the game and try to guess what the next thing is, I think is something that I envy a lot in people who are good at it.
Yeah. And especially you look at these big, companies like Amazon or Facebook, can keep doing what they're doing because they're so big. They're not going to go anywhere anytime soon, but they really, Alphabet, they all have to do that.
It's crazy.
I can't say I have firsthand experience with it, but that's the hard part, is
so cool.
Never kind of resting on your laurels and always kind of being skittish and looking around the corner in a good way.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that. Okay, here's another big thing that everyone wants to know. A lot of young people ask is getting investors. You guys talk, there's all different types of stuff in here, and obviously we don't have time to go through all of it, but it's kind of like, once again, like maybe everyone thinks that investors are the key to success, and well, I could do this if I had investors or if I had money. Not always true, but sometimes helpful. What would you say as far as advice on getting investors, who to look for, where to get it? You talk about strategic versus just bringing on money.
Yeah.
What do you say in that?
Again, I'll start by saying I don't take for granted it's easy to always find money, but I think start from the assumption that it's better to try to be picky when, start by being pickier, and then eventually your options will kind of dictate your pickiness. But start with things like, if you can help it, unless you have the kind of business that you don't think you could use, that you don't want any outside counsel, always look for things besides, money, value add money, right? Who brings some kind of strategic value. And then after that, I think it's just making sure you just spend a lot of time with the people or the company to know what you're getting and what you're not getting, because most investor issues come about because there wasn't a clear line of like, oh, this is how we're going to communicate, or this is how we're going to be involved or not be involved. And then with money comes expectations. So I think it's about vetting those expectations as best you can before you do a deal.
Yeah. And I love that you talk about don't lie to your investors like you don't lie to your doctor. That's so good.
because it always comes back to bite you, right?
Yeah, you got to just be honest, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that is the natural, like you kind of fluff to raise the money, and then you kind of keep fluffing to, you know what I'm saying, to
Right.
keep people at bay. It's interesting. Whereas if you just start off by being honest, I guess
Yeah,
it
no,
is the
look,
healthiest way.
I don't think you should. Yeah, and when you're trying to sell something, you have no track record and everything else. I wouldn't say you should be dishonest, but you obviously have to paint a rosy
Ambitious,
picture and kind
yeah.
of give the best case scenario. And people know that and they haircut it. But then what that piece of wisdom was kind of more once you're in bed with people. You know, I think partners will always appreciate bad news ahead of time, not finding out about it later, not
Yeah.
finding out about it through someone else.
And I think that you get the right, you know, I think there's a lot of times when you'd be surprised at how much those type of people are willing to help if they know the real diagnosis. You know what I mean? And like, I think a lot of people lie their way into a bigger problem than what originally was there.
Yeah.
I mean, some investors, I'm sure, just are no help. You know, like they don't care. They just want to see their returns. But I do think like the more you're open about that stuff, the more likely you are to get the support you need. The next thing would be, so let's say, you know, I have this company, I got investors, or maybe I didn't, and now I want to scale it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you guys, there's a lot in here about
Nail it before you scale it.
yeah, nail it before you scale it, and making sure that you hit it and it's real before you, because now you can raise the money, you can have the great idea, and you can burn it into the ground again by not scaling properly. What's kind of your lessons in that stuff?
Yeah, if I had to summarize that, it's that I think companies back in the day would be like, oh, we're doing well. We're growing at 20% a year or 30% or doing something like that. And now if you're a big mature company, growing at 20% a year is off the charts. But when you're starting something from the ground up, I think one of the graphs we have in there is Dollar Shave Club.
Yep.
The graph of these things now, it's like the old J curve where it's like nothing, 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 boom, like off the charts, right?
Yeah.
And 1,000% growth, as you got from my sound effect there. It's that. But in the beginning, I can't emphasize it enough. Of course, sales always matter, but don't just focus on the so what of the sales. Like, what's the insight? What are we doing? Are we getting, if it's a direct-to-consumer e-commerce business, or focusing on that LTV, that long-term value, that customer acquisition cost, the average order value. It's about those insights, because, you know, we've got some businesses where once you just nail that little insight, if I'm like, wow, I'm making $5 on every transaction, I think I can maintain that, I might just pour hundreds of thousands of dollars on it because every transaction is profitable.
Yeah.
But getting to that point where you figure out those ratios or that secret sauce or like that customer insight, that's the real hard part. So just, you can't rush it.
It seems like we're in the age of the unhealthy scale. Am I right, or has that always been a thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've been around long enough to say if it's always been a thing, but we are definitely in that age where someone goes, oh, our sales are blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, but wait, you're losing money on every transaction. So the more you sell, the more you lose. And it's about, you know, I think being within shouting distance of break even for most of the brands we go for, because they're super high growth, is fine. But you just have to make sure things like the unit economics are there, because then eventually you could be profitable if you had to tomorrow.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have unprofit, you know, unit economics, then those are really hard to fix if you can't undo that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just weird to me. And like I said, I didn't know if it was sort of one of those things that I just am just now old enough that I'm actually paying attention, and I've never paid attention my whole life, but it just seems like every company is losing money and every company's spending to grow, and like it's just the new thing. I don't know. It just seems stupid.
I agree. I mean, I think that's when people say, is it a bubble? I'm like, I don't think it's a bubble, but I think it's a bubble in certain aspects, right? I think some late stage companies are overvalued. I think that some companies that aren't tech companies, or, you know, like that aren't tech companies, are getting tech valuations, and some companies are losing too much. It's okay to lose if there's really a clear turnaround plan. But, you know, people have even questioned things like Uber. Like, you look at their losses, those are big losses.
Yeah.
I do think in the case of something like even Lyft, which has a lot less sales, but they have a lot smaller losses, it shows there's a way to narrow them and kind of turn very profitable when you do it. But those are the things you got to look at more closely.
Okay, so here's so getting to the end here, you talk about the big goal for a lot of people, the exit, which I also think people are undereducated on in general. Like, I think that, you know, like we said in the very beginning, you kind of take it back in this ending, is like they don't they don't plan for an exit, so you don't build for it, and you don't realize that one day you could have had sort of that payday and that, move on, do whatever you want to do, go on a lot of vacations, cash out. One thing that you guys talk about is that being a successful business doesn't necessarily mean a guaranteed successful exit. To wrap it all up into one, because I know we're low on time, is like, if I'm at that point, how do I know if I'm set up for a good exit or not? How do I find even the buyers? How do I wrap my head around that?
Yeah. So again, if you're at that point, I'll tell you what we think you should do, but just to emphasize again, to the extent you can think about that up front, will save yourself a lot of time on the back end, right? Make every decision with what your hopeful outcome or desired outcome is in mind. But now you're at that point. We had a guy, I think, we talk about in the book a little bit, but I see this all the time. I saw a guy last week who'd gotten to like 17 million in sales. That's a big number.
Yeah.
And no one wanted to buy him. And he was shocked. I said, with all due respect, the way you got there and kind of his business was a little this, a little that, it wasn't even clear to me. I'm like, I'm shocked that you think you'd find a buyer because it was 17 million of very, I would say, unstrategic so what sales, right? And so I think the best thoughts we can give that are in the book is that if you're selling to a strategic buyer, you really just have to put yourself in their shoes and say, why would they want to buy this? And you just have to, I think we call it breadcrumbs. You have to feed them the breadcrumbs because you'll never cease to be amazed of people who have heard of your brand, who haven't heard of your brand. There's always misconceptions, sometimes positive ones, sometimes negative ones. So it's about, just managing the message, leaving the breadcrumbs. And, we talk about this in the chapter. We had the notion because nobody broke down our door that maybe nobody wanted to buy it. And if I'm being realistic, like say something like our spirits company, our first one, Vive, I would say is I think we had a good product and proposition. And for most people, it was like a nice to have, but not a need to have. And I think it's a little bit like sailboat, speedboat. Most companies are sailboats. I think most companies, even ones that have been successful, are nice to haves, not needs to have. If you're a need to have, you will know because they will come with the battering ram and the checkbook. That's great. I hope to be there someday. I've been a part of some brands, not necessarily ones I've started, that have had that happen. Has not happened to me directly. I'm fine with it because it teaches you kind of the scrappiness that the book and being an entrepreneur is all about. So we talk about things like pre-court the buyers, leave the breadcrumbs. Say, hey, Dave, you're the CEO of X. We've never met. I know we're both going to be this trade show. Just wanted to say hi and chat and go in with no agenda and just leave the breadcrumbs and build the relationship. So people that we ended up being in talks to sell Vive to and other brands that I've been a part of, usually I've known them for a year or two. And they didn't come with checkbook blazing and we didn't come going, hey, we're for sale. We're hiking up our skirt here. But, everyone kind of knew what the start of the dance was, but you really got to pre-court them and make sure you put yourself in a winning position.
Yeah, that was cool. That one really resonated with me also. Just the sort of right way to handle it. I think once again, myself starting a company at a young age, like I had the vision of people knocking down your door with a battering ram, right? Because that's just what happens. Like you just build this company, you're so successful, all of a sudden you have to tell people to fuck off because they're offering you money and you don't want it, right? And it's like, you kind of set your goal on like, that's just going to happen. And I don't know the other way. I don't have to plan for it. And I think that being realistic and actually properly planning to exit a business is a little bit, not like a rap lyric.
And just remember, if you plan the way that we say has worked for us or that we've seen work best in the book, and someone comes with a battering ram, that's great. It's not hard to, show up when they have a checkbook open, but you got a contingency plan with most things.
What would your final words be to the listener who is now super inspired, motivated, ready to go, hopefully going to go through your kind of intro checklist of whether they're even built for this or not? What's kind of like your sign-off words for those type of people?
Wow, no one's asked me that on any of my previous interviews. I would say I just go back to some basic things. Like, it's like, I'll never forget when I graduated from Harvard Business School, and then someone raises a hand, an international student says to the professor, great, I'm like graduating from Harvard Business School, I'm going out in the world, what should I do? And you could see this person was just amped, like they just had 25 Red Bulls, and the professor, who was also the associate dean, said, nothing. And he was like, well, what do you mean? I'm like ready. And he said, just let it marinate for a minute, right? You have all these ideas. We filled you with all this stuff. It's all there, but you don't have to call on it all day one. You don't have to go to these seminars and come back and revamp your whole company. So I would say just take it in, let it marinate, and then just take action. Because I think analysis paralysis overcomes a lot of us. And you can read this and have it all annotated and do all this and that. But then if you just sit there and go, oh, but he said do that. I mean, a lot of things we said in there are like, it's a judgment call, right? It's like things, there's a balance or a barbell to almost everything we say in there. And we can't possibly give you prescriptive things for most things. It's about your judgment. So we're just trying to give you things that have worked in our experience and different things. So analysis paralysis. And then I really believe that we're in the age of like, if you think you're kind of treading water, you're probably moving backwards. So just keep taking steps, left foot, right foot, proverbially, and take solace in the fact that you definitely do not have to get every decision right. You just have to not get it so wrong that it sinks anything. So just take solace in being smart about the big decisions and making any decision for a lot of the things that probably seem important but are inconsequential will do you better than making no decision.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good, especially for never being asked that before. You nailed it. Okay, last thing, and then I'll let you go. Because this is the part that I'm fascinated by, and I think that my listeners have started to grow into really liking like take-home advice that they can do tomorrow. And so this is something like we were talking about before we started that I'm just getting into because I was not raised on this even being a thing. I wasn't taught about morning routines. I wasn't taught about mindset. Wasn't talking about meditation, and it almost was always looked at as like this weird thing, right? Like you're just kind of, I don't know. The people who do it are weird. Now I'm super into it. I think I feel like I've discovered this thing. You know, like it's like discovering running when you didn't know that working out was a thing, right? And so I'm trying to work on it and trying to get in the habit. What is your, you know, you obviously operate on a very high level. It takes a lot of mental energy as well as just physical, being up, going to meetings, flying around, doing, you know, living that life. What are your daily routines or rituals that keep you sort of grounded or on point?
Yeah. Well, I'll kind of bang through some maybe rapid fire.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely believe in like working out and all that. For me, I have usually barely the strength to lift a pencil, much less my laptop in the morning. So I'm not like a morning workout person. Yeah. But I've really come around to this idea that like, you know, and most of my stuff is admittedly kind of borrowed from the Tim Ferrisses of the world or Tony Robbins, guys that we're friendly or friends with, but who I admire. So I've kind of cobbled together my stuff. But I now truly believe that a lot of times in the morning, how your day starts is kind of how it will go. A little bit of that priming, a little bit of that framing, a little bit of that manifesting. But I also believe you wake up, it's kind of like every day, it literally is that, oh my God, it's a new day. So it's really important what you do for the first couple hours. And listen, disclaimer, probably half the days I wake up still, it's just like, oh crap, I got to do this, flip open the laptop and just get after it. And I'm lucky that I like don't lack that ambition to do it, but I'm trying to transition toward waking up and just trying to leave, you know, in a perfect world, like that first hour of the day to not check any devices and just get on with creative things. So I can pull up my good old BlackBerry here and literally read you my list, but I'll do some off the top of my head. I have an inversion thing that you hang upside down. So I'll try and do that for like a minute or two while I leave someone a voicemail or do something like that. Just decompresses your spine. Great when you're traveling, just flipping upside down, get the blood moving through your body. I do that. I have one of those vibrating plates that's just kind of supposed to kind of loosen everything up. I use one that Dave Asprey has, the bulletproof plate. I try to do some meditation when I can. We're investors in Headspace, so I love Headspace. Tony Robbins has a great priming one that I've gotten from his seminars that I just have on an MP3. There's certainly some days where I'm rushed and I kind of have like a 4-minute one, but I think the point is just to take some, honestly, I'm always shocked how just shutting your eyes, being still and taking some deep breaths, 20 deep breaths in and out goes a long way. I like this. I have a couple guys that are like, the trainers I use now tend to be less about like, help me hit a new bench press record and more about like movement and functional stuff. So I have a bunch of exercises I do to try to, I have really tight hips because I sit here all day and you probably see I'm like squirmy all the time. So it's like things to just loosen up my back or my hips, because I think if you start the day better posturally balanced, you can kind of keep that. So I try to do those exercises in the morning. There's a guy named Wim Hof, the Iceman, who people should check out, who's actually opening a center in LA that I'm talking about being a partner of. If people don't know him, it's amazing, his breathing exercise, and you should check out all his stuff. But I try to do parts of his, so I either take a really cold shower or I don't heat my pool most of the time, especially in winter. So I keep it that brisk 50-something degrees. You just, right before you finish everything to go on the day, you just plunge in that thing. Trust me, that'll wake you up like you wouldn't believe when it's like chilly outside like it is now in LA. I have a breathing set of breathing exercises, are kind of Tibetan breaths, Tai Chi-esque. A guy named Master Ko, who's over in Chino Hills, where the famed Ball brothers are from. But I think Master Ko's the best thing to come out of Chino Hills. You do these Tibetan breathing exercises where it just kind of gets the breaths moving with a little movement. I love it. It's had some incredible research. What else do I got? Hold on, I'm gonna look at my BlackBerry just to make sure I didn't leave anything important off.
And so that's, you try as much as you can to run through all of those.
Yeah, and it's I view it a little bit like clearly I don't get through all those every day, and although that sounds like a lot, that's all I can do it all in like 45 minutes if I'm kind of tight. Yeah. But I just try to. It's like an a la carte menu. Most days, on the best days, I usually kind of pick half to 2/3 and just try to make sure I'm varying it. I have one of those little balls, or just kind of these spiky balls that you just roll your arches out on. Just walking around and just from playing sports, my arches were really tight. I think it's good. It feels much better to to walk around, do things like that. So wow, I'm going through my list. It's pretty good. I put on some of those like binaural beats sometimes when I do stuff that just kind of, there's an app that I've just started using that I like called Focus at Will, that you're just supposed to put on in the background when you're working, and it supposedly syncs with your brainwaves and keeps you kind of copacetic, so you get into like a flow state faster. Yeah, Focus at Will. You have to pay for it, but I think it's worth it. I've been using that. And then my last one or two here that I will say is I believe in making your bed. That's like a Tim Ferriss one. It just starts the day off with some discipline, and if it all goes to shit, I made my bed, which I don't know if that's much solace, but maybe it is. But as Tim Ferriss says, the little things are the big things. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so just making your bed, I do it pretty OCD. And here's the last thing, and this one again is stolen from Tony Robbins, is drink more. When I wake up, before I put any food in my mouth, I try to drink like an obscene amount of water, like a big old double mason jar or something, like maybe 16 to 24 ounces. And one, it's really good for, just getting everything flowing in the morning, shall we say, and keeping you regular. But you wake up so dehydrated, and most of the time people are tired. They think it's something else, but it's really dehydration. And like I got this from going to a Tony Robbins seminar where he said, just do me a favor for the next 3 days. When you feel tired, just take a guzzle of water, because no one here drinks enough, 99%. And I'm like, well, I'm the 1%, of course. And then I just did it, and I'm like, it makes a huge difference. So I've gone from drinking maybe like 60, 70 ounces a day to like, over half my body weight, so maybe like 120 ounces a day. And it just makes a big difference in alert. I do no caffeine. I mean, I do
no caffeine at all.
I do no coffee, despite having been investors in Blue Bottle and Bulletproof and things like that.
Have you always done no coffee?
Pretty much. I got coffee cups for presents when I went to college. I'm like, but I don't drink coffee. They're like, trust me, you will. And I'm like,
just drink water.
15 years later, I'm like, nope, I don't. So,
fill them with water.
So,
What do you use the BlackBerry for? Emails only?
Yeah, it's just easier to check emails. I'm just a creature of habit. I like my Outlook. I like my BlackBerry. I'm big on organizational systems. So it's guys like, sorry, I just forgot his name, who wrote the book Getting Things Done, which is kind of the old school book that everyone uses, and file folders and this and that. And the world's changed because it's a much more digital world. But all the principles hold true still. And it's basically the idea that there's so many different ways to organize yourself. All that matters is, one, it works for you, and two, you're accountable to it. Because an organization, if you use it 80% of the time, then it's not really that effective. You have to use it all the time. So whatever works for you. And so for me, I like we use Gmail product, G Suite of products, Google's products.
But only email. You do phone and text on your iPhone.
Yeah, I use WhatsApp a lot. So I don't text people that much anymore. I use email, WhatsApp,
I'm jealous of the BlackBerry. I have one still sitting at my house. I look at every day, and I'm like, man, I want to use that, but I can't figure out where. Okay, we did it, man. I'm going to let you get out of here. The book came out yesterday. Congratulations. I really feel like this is going to take you guys just to the next level. I just feel like whenever you have a book, it's just so much cooler, and it just brings you to, I think, a different level, and being able to say that you have it is a really cool thing. And we're trying to get you on that bestsellers list.
Yes.
So everyone go order. Where's the best place? Amazon?
Shortcutyourstartup.com or Amazon. It's available. Most places books are sold, but yes, you can.
And obviously like iTunes, iBooks, all that.
The Audible and the ebooks.
Great. Any
you can hear my voice on the Audible book if you want to have nails on the chalkboard.
You read the whole thing?
Oh God, I lost my voice doing it a couple of times, but I read every page of it, did all the pickups.
Holy shit.
Because it's a thing, to do your own
that's
Audible
cool.
book. It was cool, but it is
work. Do you send anyone anywhere? Social media? You guys don't really promote your Instagrams, do you, or do you?
No, we kind of just do our personal ones. Just my name, Courtney Reum, and then we always like to hear from people doing interesting stuff with M13, which is just m13.co, not .com. That .co is trendy now, and Shortcut Your Startup.
Shortcut it. Thank you, man. This was great. I think a lot of people are going to get value here. I really hope that one day somebody will be inspired by this book or by you or this podcast to start a company that they then bring to you guys, and M13 takes it to the next level. Just full
that
circle.
would be the virtuous cycle. It'd be really cool to be like, or have someone show up and be like, just so you know, I never reached out to you, but my company's been hugely successful and it started with your book.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Done deal. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
There it was. I hope you liked it. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you thought. Click the share button, send it to a friend, let them get inspired. Check it out on iTunes, and check out my other show, Group Chat, that I just started with my business partner, Dee. I think you'll like it. I'll be back next week. Thank you.